We're going to wait for a few more people to join in, and we're going to kickstart the webinar.
Okay.
So without much ado, I'll probably have some musical interlude in the background as we wait for about some 3 minutes.
Okay.
To allow enough people in to kickstart the conversation, if you don't mind.
That works.
Awesome. Thank you.
You look sexy. All my beautiful ladies who wanna link up, they wanna send me location. Me and my homies having a drink up. I was safari with a vacation. Yes, 5-star life. Keys moving like dolphins, and you know we got ice on ice. Yes, big boys know they like talking. What else? I can't let you go, cause of the grace for your body. And the energy, oh, make you give me a baby. Why you so? Know your body tonight. I go pop champagne for your body tonight. Oh, it's a morning tonight. Know your body.
Just 2 minutes and we're going to kickstart this event.
You look sexy tonight. I know we just met, but if I said, please let me take you out if it's alright. I need a lady by my side, and I can look at the further cause she my type. You know I saw you coming, and I could see that I don't really know this girl, but she's a vibe. And now you looking no surprise. I'm sorry, I apologize, cause I can't help it. I got a crush on you, I'm kinda selfish. You think it's a lie, don't you? My coma melted, cause I can die for you. You know I felt it, that I be the one for you. Would you wanna walk with me? A couple things that we can talk about. Baby, please talk to me. Tell me what you need and I can sort it out. You know I got you. I can't let you go, cause of the grace for your body. And the energy, oh, make it give me baby, why you do me so? Know your body tonight. I go pop champagne for your body tonight. Oh, it is a morning tonight.
Okay, I think we are probably in a good shape to kickstart this. We are almost 5 minutes into time. So without further ado, I'm going to kickstart the conversation. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Shifting Product Mindsets, our monthly series where we host great minds to share their knowledge experiences with us. This is the first session actually for the year, and we are honored to have our speaker with us, Fabrice Ayivi-Ga, who is a senior designer at Design B&B, and he's going to take us through some insightful walk through how you're going to create a defined design roadmap or a design career roadmap. Before I hand over to Fabrice, I would like to go through a couple of rules of engagement for this session, which is first most. Let's do well to keep our mics off during the presentation. And also, if you have any questions during the presentation, kindly drop them in the chat. We'll have a Q&A session after he does the presentation, and you would get them answered through the session. So this is actually going to be an open forum where we're going to have some questions thrown at Fabrice, and he's going to enlighten us to the topic, which is creating a design career roadmap. So Fabrice, over to you, please.
Hi. It's very nice to meet everyone. First of all, I will introduce myself again. My name is Fabrice Ayivi-Ga Togbassa, and I'm a senior designer at Design B&B, and I also run a freelance business on the side. So it's really nice to meet everyone, and I guess today we're going to be talking about creating a career roadmap in design. I come from a background that's a little peculiar. You know, I moved to the United States about 20 years ago. And then when I came here, of course, you know, I went to school for journalism. And then after that, I kind of moved to Hawaii and changed trajectory, and I majored in creative media and I got my bachelor's in that. And so once I did that, some time went by and I started a master's in digital sculpting, but it wasn't really what I was trying to do. So I got an internship into a design studio at the time called Theory, and that was all, you know, in Hawaii. And so I did an internship with them for about 7 months, basically, and it was kind of like an apprenticeship actually, where I was just working, you know, 8 to 12 hours a day, trying to earn the craft, trying to learn, trying to understand the field that I'm in, and really kind of hone in on some of those things. So that was a very kind of interesting pathway, but you know, I learned a lot this way, and then you know, I became kind of a digital artist, and 2-3 years went by, and you know, from a digital artist, you know, I got a lead position as a lead designer there. A position opened, and even though at the time I wasn't really involved in design like that because I was mostly doing like a lot of illustration and 3D work, I kind of jumped, you know, and switched a little bit because design was really appealing to me. I thought it's an interesting field to be in because it's a good way to kind of marry 3D and 2D at the same time. So going from there, you know, and then after that, it's just kind of like different, you know, I did that for a while. And when I was a lead designer after, you know, I freelanced for a while, I contracted. And then when I moved back to the mainland, you know, I went into the education field, you know, and then from the education field, I worked for a university for about 4 years. And then after that, I decided to go back into the private sector. And now I'm at Design B&B. So, yeah.
Fantastic. I mean, this is so great. Having to walk us through your line of experience is so refreshing to hear.
Yeah.
So I guess, yeah, that is so refreshing to say the least. Without much ado, I'll kick in straight to the core item of discussion here. I mean, there has been a whole roundup of discussion around this very main topic about designing a career roadmap in design.
Yeah.
And I mean, we are so honored to have you here. I mean, one of the very key things that have come. Yeah, please go on. Come in.
No. I just say you're very welcome.
Thank you. So one of the very key things that have come in mind or through our discussions have been understanding what a design career roadmap is. How would you define a design career roadmap?
I think it's pretty much trying to best refine what your final objective for a career is, to be honest, you know, and this will change over time. I think I don't think it's something that is linear or static. I think it's something that changes based on your interest, based on your skill level, based on where you end up, based on the culture that you're working with. I think it's important to have because it allows you to kind of plan ahead. If you're planning, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ahead, you know, and then you're deciding that in 5 years, you're going to be this certain type of designer. And it really depends what kind of role you're trying to achieve. You know, for example, I was talking with one of your colleagues recently, Michael, who actually mentioned that he wanted to be a freelance designer. That's what he wanted to do, you know, and I was thinking, that's great and that's awesome because he's doing freelance like that. And if he becomes a professional freelancer, maybe down the line he would actually maybe want to have his own studio and go the entrepreneurial route. But that's not
Right.
necessarily maybe what he would want to do. Maybe he just
Mm.
wants to be a technical designer. I'm saying Michael, but that could be another designer. So I think that
Yeah.
it's really important to have to kind of plan ahead what you're trying to do. Yeah.
Wow, that is great. Well, I mean, you mentioned some very key things regarding the change as you go along in your journey and how
Yeah.
important this is. How, and let me put it this way: why is it important to have a design career roadmap? Actually,
Why is it important to have
to
a
have
career
a design.
roadmap?
Yeah. Why do you think it's important, or do you actually think it's important to have one?
Yes, I think it is important to have one. I think it is important to have one. And, I'll give my specific example. I didn't have a career roadmap until,
Mm.
a little later, right? So, I did my internship and I figured that, I wanted to be a certain type of designer after that. But that's all I needed because I love the craft and I love being in this field. But as, I grew older and things change, you aspire for more, or, you're hungrier for knowledge, or
Mm.
you're trying to orient yourself in a specific industry that matches your core values. It really depends what you're trying to do, but I think it helps you strategize what your goals are throughout your career, because yes, you may have an end goal, but these goals are going to have to change, or are going to change naturally based on your interest or based on your skill level. Or are you just looking for the best way to kind of create a pathway for yourself in that field? Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, really key. Thank you for highlighting that. And you mentioned something in your submission, which is that as you go along your career line, it is, I mean, you are free to change it. When do you think it's feasible to have a change in making alterations to your career roadmap?
That's going to be kind of an interesting answer, but I think that it has to feel right to you. It has to feel like, maybe the path that you're taking is not necessarily, leading to where you would want to be. And like I said, either your skill level or your passion or where you are at that time in your profession, you're transitioning or you're looking for something different. But I think it has to feel right, because if the desire to change that career path is not necessarily authentic, then I think you might run into some issues. I feel, but that's a
Mm.
personal opinion. I think another designer might say something totally different.
Nice. You just mentioned another designer might also have a different opinion about it. That takes me down the lane of this very key pertinent question. Do you also think career roadmaps should, or probably are going to have the same kind of journey map with every designer? Is it going to look the
Um,
same for every designer? Is it going to change depending on your career or the type of designer you are? Maybe you are a designer, you're a UX designer, you are a user researcher or design researcher. Your path will be different. Do you think it is the same for, or it is different?
I think I think the progression, I think in hierarchy, I
Mm.
think it's a little bit of the same for everyone. You go from, an intern, or, you just get in the studio, and then, you become a regular designer, and then you become a junior, and then you become a senior. And then after
Mm.
that, you can decide which way you want to take. But for example, even, I have colleagues that are senior designers, they're more technical designers, right? And so they're more on that side. I have coworkers that are conceptual designers, and that's their field, but they're still senior. So I think that, there's a pathway that's similar for all of us in terms of, hierarchy and progression and improvement within our field. And of course that comes with, monetary compensation. But I think that there's also, an individualized pathway that you carve for yourself. So I think that even if you're looking to become a freelance designer or an entrepreneur, I think that you do need to have a certain skill level to match that position that
Mm.
you have. So that, for example, if you decide to become an entrepreneur and have your own studio, you need to be able to lead other designers and other senior designers. And, in the particular case of leading a studio, that would be
Mhm.
being able to work with art directors and such. So I think that, yes, there's a similar pathway for all of us, but then there's an individual career path that we carve for ourselves. And that's when I think the career roadmap comes in handy, because you've kind of created some steps of what you want to do.
Interesting. And would you say it is also kind of similar to the industry path you take?
I think so. I think, you know, most of the designers I've encountered in the industry, it was kind of that path as well. You'll have some people that come and will intern for a while, and then if the internship works with them, then they might be able to get into the studio at a certain position, but they might also use that internship and go to another studio and start at a certain level. And based on, their skills and how they're improving in the field, I think that, things will progress in that linear way as we're talking about. But also think that, for example, if you become a junior designer and you want to switch field, let's say you're a research designer and you want to switch field because you want to start doing product design, I think that these are things that are possible. But at the same time, you need a certain skill level to be able to make that transition.
Really key, really key. I think this is great. I think at this point we've gotten a good understanding of what a design career roadmap is, how important it is to have one, and how different it is in terms of outlook per designer. And so
Yes.
it takes me down this other question, which is how do I create a design career roadmap?
How do you create a career design roadmap? I think that first of all, you start by doing your research. You need to know, first of all, you need to understand your field. You need to know what are the requirements for your field depending on what you want to do. I think if research, understand what are the positions that you're trying to get at or not get at. So I think depending on that, what are the skills that you need to build to get there? Because, for example, if you decide to go to managerial path, you need to have leadership skills. You need to have communication skills that are on par with the position that you're taking. You need to be able to work within a team, but at the same time lead a team. You need to be able to mentor. So, if you're a technical designer, you need to be a little more of a specialist, but at the same time, you need to be able to support the rest of the team at a certain level. But in order to be a really good technical designer, you need to have a skill level that a little bit beyond everybody. So I think it's really understand the positions that you're aiming for, but also making the research that would allow you to make educated decisions.
This is key. This is key, Fabrice. This is key. You mentioned something around, knowing where you are going. And that takes me again back to the whole start of it, of creating a design career roadmap, where we get to ask ourselves, where do we start from?
Is that a question? Where do you start from?
Where do you start from when you want to create a good career roadmap? Where is the good placement of the pin to say, hey, I want to start from here, or this is the good starting point for me in creating a really defined design career roadmap?
Start at the level that you're at. So I think you can look at designers that you follow, portfolios, skill level. You can look at that and kind of evaluate yourself. When you're working with clients, when you're working within an organization, I think you should have, I think, not necessarily the humility, but the integrity and being humble enough to evaluate yourself. Because sometimes when we evaluate ourselves, we discover that our skill level is not necessarily where we think we are, but where we really are. So I think it's important to be very cognizant of where you are and then go from there. And then based on that, just kind of build that pathway. There's nothing wrong if you realize that like your skill level is not where you need to be. All you can do from there is get better. So from that perspective, I think that's why I would look at it. Start where you are, but be cognizant of the market that you work in and be cognizant of your peers and how good they are. And because your peers are actually going to educate how you're going to move as well. So, and you can learn a lot from them, especially if they're better than you. So I think start where you are. And if it's at the bottom, then you're at the bottom and you go from there.
Nice. That is great. It sounds like like you mentioned something about start where you are and then be cognizant of the environments within which you find yourself. Before I jump into my next question, to our awesome audience here, the floor will be open for Q&As in some few minutes. So bear with us as we go through these various questions, okay? It is just to build a good understanding of creating a really defined career or design career roadmap. And so that takes me to my next question, Fabrice, which was one of the things you mentioned in your submission, where we are asking ourselves, what resources do we need to then carve out a good design roadmap?
What resources we need? So let's say I think if you're working within an organization, or an organization is, getting the tools that are going to allow you to understand the field that you work in. It could be data, it could be, information, it could be your career goals that you set for yourself. It could be the type of leadership that you might need, or the type of leadership skills that you might need. It could be knowledge base, understanding the terms. Your skills are attached to technical skills, so understanding the softwares that you're working with. For example, a simple thing as knowing shortcuts. I think that's a lot of time is something we take for granted, but that will take you far, right? Because you work with senior designers today that are still like, oh, how do how do you move the artboard a certain way, right? And what's the shortcut for that? So I think it's really, and that goes back to really understanding the landscape within which you work, and if you can do that and doing as much research as possible, and understand that as you're moving up, or as you're moving laterally, or as you're getting more understanding, there's going to be more knowledge that's coming as well, and really be cognizant of that. And I think, trying to raise your own skill level, and at the same time create a pathway for yourself, which I know is not evident, but I think that's the work that we have to do as creatives.
Really interesting and key points you've just shared with us on understanding the landscape within which you fall. Then that then leads me into the next question, where again I'm asking myself, how do I then know I've created a good career or design career roadmap?
And my question to that is, are you where you want to be when you do that self-check again? So you asked me at the beginning, how do you understand your landscape, and where do you go, and how do you evaluate yourself? If you're starting from the bottom and you're moving up, or whichever way you're moving, I think that you're going to reconsider yourself as you're going on your pathway. I think that you're always going to have to do that analysis every time you end up where you want to be or where you're not going to be. So I think it's really important to take that into account, and self as you're going.
Nice. Great. You've touched on another one that is very key. And I think during your submission on the third point, you mentioned something around evaluating yourself as a designer, or where you fall within the journey. How would you say is the best metric, or what is the best metrics to use in evaluating yourself as a designer, looking clearly at your roadmap from where you began to where you are presently, or from where you are starting? How would you say, or what metrics would you define as a good one to use?
I mean, if you not necessarily comparing yourself to your peers, but I think that with the different roles that you have, there's certain responsibilities and certain necessities that come with those. So I think that you can use that to evaluate yourself. You can, for example, as a senior designer, or as a junior designer, or as a mid-level designer, there's a certain skill level that's required. There's a certain level of, communication skills that's required. As a senior designer, there's a certain level of leadership that's required. So I think that based on those things, you can use these as like metrics, kind of, and also you can try to evaluate the quality of your own work compared to other designers, compared to designers that are out in the world. And I think that it's really important to compare ourselves to our peers, but it's also important to try to maintain a certain level of authenticity. But it's also important to see what's happening outside of our echo chambers. For example, I would love to see what's happening in South Korea. with designers there to see what they're doing. I would love to see what's happening in Bulgaria, for example, not because, just because I have a natural cultural interest in designers throughout the world and what they're doing. So I think all of these things that we put into kind of our box and toolbox and carry with us, it's your skills, it's how you communicate, it's how your portfolio is, it's the quality of, your technical skills, yeah.
Wow, key, really key pointers there on evaluating yourself as a designer, looking through or clearly at your roadmap. You mentioned something again on having to have a good view of the landscape, comparing yourself again, not just comparing yourself, but looking through the landscape and then seeing what others are doing within the region. Do you think, and I'm also thinking around this line of bias where you think, hey, since I'm evaluating myself, there are going to be some comforts or some parts at the back. Well, I think I'm doing well. It's okay. Let me not stress myself. Let me not kill myself too much. Do you think there are going to be those instances, and how do you keep those instances when they come
in? Could you repeat the last part of the question?
Okay, so how do you keep those instances when they come in where you feel like, oh, it is okay, let me not kill myself on trying to evaluate myself on these biases, thinking of comparing yourself with others in the region, either within, let's say Africa, for instance, either within the African ecosystem or international?
Yeah. I think, okay, this is going to be a very subjective answer, but I think that we need to have
definitely
we need to have a certain level of self-honesty, and I think that when those moments come, it's not so much about I'm not going to kill myself trying to compare myself to others. I'm going to try to see if the work that I'm doing is as authentic as I wanted it to be, but also marrying to this that it needs to be. And then after that, when you start looking, because you also want to feel like, or maybe, want to see where you at worldwide or in the region, as you said. But I think it depends also in the market. And I think that also, this is when money comes in play, where, how you're working within the market and how successful that is, and how your projects are successful, the type of clients that you're working with, the type of reach that you have. I think all these things come in play. But I think like the whole beating yourself up, I think that we shouldn't look at it that way. I think that every time we feel like this is a place where we need to evaluate ourselves, I think it should be genuine. It shouldn't be so much about, it should be about how honest we are with ourselves, I think. Yeah.
Nice. Great. Thank you so much for that. I think the floor is now open for questions our audiences would have for Fabrice. If there are any questions, the floor is open, please. You could also feel free to drop them in the chat and it would be read. Any more questions from the floor? You can raise your hands and you'll be called out to ask your questions, or you could alternatively also drop them in the chat.
Yeah, I think Michael has a question.
Okay, yeah, Michael, please go ahead, please.
Okay, I think I want to know that if I'm in an organization, right, and then I'm trying to scale or advance through the organization, how can I approach my manager and then have a conversation with them about my current position in the organization and then where I want to get to and how to actually get there?
I think, I think it depends the type of relationship that you have with your manager, first of all. And I think that if you're in a legitimate organization that cares about its employees, I think you'll have things like one-on-ones and moments where you have conversation with your manager or your creative director that allows you to kind of create that career roadmap within the organization, right? So I think that, these things are helpful. And I think that if you want to engage in that conversation, and I think depending on the type of relationship that you have, let's say if you're close to your manager or your creative director, they will see how you develop within the job that you're at. And I think the more responsibility they give you, I feel like it means that they trust you, especially when it comes to leadership. And so I think that these things sometimes come naturally, but I think that in other moments you have to push for the conversation if you're actually in a position where you feel like you can carry on with these responsibilities of a larger role, but you feel like you might not necessarily be compensated for it, or you don't feel like you're getting the position for it. I think that you can engage in a conversation one-on-one with your manager and try to evaluate and kind of create a structure that there's some sense of fair evaluation of your skills and the position where you're at the moment.
Really key. Do you have any? I mean, Ivy, is your question answered? Michael?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. You mentioned something, Fabrice, about approaching your employer or your manager on the structure. Do you have any, maybe lay down templates in terms of how to approach this? That is, if you do.
I don't necessarily have a template, but I think that it's important to be able to use some kind of observational skills to know who you're working with. I think that's really important. It's just like our clients. Like, who your coworkers are, who your leadership is, how they communicate, you understand what they stand for, or how they would approach you, or how you should approach them. So I think just like we work with clients, we have different, even though we have the skills and we have a certain process to get to the finish line, I think that, sometimes we might need to apply some of these skills in how we communicate with leadership and how we communicate with our peers. But I think that being able, without necessarily using a template, being able to engage in those type of conversation in an authentic way, but at the same time being mindful of who you're addressing and who you're talking to and how you're communicating with that person, especially knowing that they're in a position of leadership and that could affect your career as well, that we're all cognizant of all these little elements, I think.
Really key. Thank you for the submission. I think this comes with a follow-up question regarding the leadership touch points in your submission. Yeah. How can you objectively identify the future skills requirements for an organization?
The future skills?
Yeah, in trying to tap into the leadership ladder as you climb up.
Oh, you just need to, that loops back to the career roadmap. So if you're an organization and for example, do you want to become an art director? Do you want to become a creative director? Do you want to become a principal designer? Then that means that it leads back to the research that we talked about at the beginning, where you understand the landscape of your job. You understand what skill level is required for you. You understand the responsibility that come with your position and the position that you aspire to obtain. Because if you understand the position that you aspire to obtain, then that will give you better tool set, to access that. So if for example, that as an entrepreneur, there's certain skills that you need. You need, accounting, you need to understand budget, you need to understand the type of designers that you're going to be working with. So if you know that you have to do that, then you can start practicing those skills at your level. And I think that, Michael talking about being a freelancer, I think that's perfect, right? Because he's putting himself in a position where, yes, you're independent, and it might be harder to access client if you were in an agency, but at the same time, you have more freedom to kind of create the career that you're looking for, right? So, yeah.
Key. Thank you for that, Fabrice. Any more questions from the floor? Just feel free. Carl, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and
Hello.
thanks for the talk, Fabrice. And I think this conversation is really good one because I never thought about having a career, a roadmap, and just hear you talking about the career roadmap. Now I'm asking myself, oh, maybe I should have a career roadmap because right now I think the only thing I have in mind is the similar path that we all have, like going through or being junior and then mid level and then see the seniority. And apart from that, there's other maybe like more personal things that we would like to have. And I'm finding interesting to have a career roadmap.
Nice.
And one of my questions was like, at what point or from what point someone should start thinking about having a career roadmap? Because when you're junior, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say as soon as you get within the field, because you don't. I don't know for everybody else, but as you're growing within your profession, your skill level and your skills in general are going to grow as well. So technically, you should not stay a junior designer forever. So knowing that, you know that you're going to access different positions, and those different positions comes with certain responsibilities. So I think it's great to be able to anticipate and start preparing for that. Because so let's say you're a junior designer and in your mind you want to be, let's say, a senior designer that worked for an organization that gives back to the community. Let's say they do social work. So not only do you have to learn about that field in particular, but you also have to learn about what it takes to be a senior designer within that field and what is required for that. So I think, you know, as soon as you know that, or as soon as you have an idea of, you know, your longevity in the field, just that at the beginning, I think you should already start, because it won't take, it's just like planning. It's just like planning for your budget. You're like, okay, you know, I'm this type of designer today, but by next year or by within the next 2 years, I want to have this skill level. So that skill level would attach yourself with a certain position. So I think the earlier you do it, the better it is. I feel like.
Okay. That is really interesting to know. Thank you so much. Any more?
Thank you.
Carl, was that answered? Was that clear for you?
Yeah, of course.
Awesome. Thank you. I think we have another question for Caleb. Caleb, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
I think Kobe Smith had a question as well.
Oh, okay. Nice. Okay, well, I think we'll take that after Caleb's question.
Okay.
Caleb, could you please unmute and... Hello, Caleb.
Hello.
Feedback. Yeah, there is a bit of a feedback from your background.
Is it clear now?
Yeah, I think it's clear. Yeah, it's clear.
Okay, thank you very much. Actually, I didn't join the meeting earlier, but I don't know if this question was answered, but then I would just like to ask. So I'm someone who has just completed uni, and then I'm already working a 9 to 5. I've just started my career path in UI, in design, and then I literally did my first wireframe and my wireframe and then my UI design recently. I'm here to do the mockup. So with someone like me, what's the best way forward for me? Because the only tools I used to learn right now is YouTube. Yeah. So if I want to start my my design career from there, what would be the best thing for me to go? What would be the best approach for me to be able to reach the top?
Yeah, and you said that you have a 9 to 5 job, right?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay. And your 9 to 5 job is not in design, am I correct?
No, it's in customer service.
It's in customer service. Okay, then I think that, you know, can you get into a course? Can you get into an organization that provides certification can you find online today there's tons of tutorials, tons of applications that you can use to better yourself individually. But I think that situation like yours, it takes a lot of self-strength and a lot of desire, but I think it's doable. I think owning your craft, inspiring yourself, continue to work on your skills and improving your skills. I think that's really important because we live in a day and age where like you have access to so many resources, even online, that if you have to work, you do your 9 to 5. I know that's a lot, depending, do you have a family or not, do you have kids or not, are you married or not. But I think that if you can kind of find the time to own these skills on your own, and that'd be great. But if you can find an organization that can support your desires, I think that's even better. Because an organization, whether it's an organization that provides certification on an online course, I think that would allow you get to kind of keep a certain discipline and structure with what you're doing. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yep, you're welcome.
Great. I think Kobe.
Eric, please, before Kobe, you ask Kobe's
Okay,
question,
sure.
I'd also like to chip into what Fabrice said. So I think one way that you can also use is to actually be part of communities, right? And then network with people that are already in the design space. So you can even
Yeah.
find a buddy that you can work with, someone that you can review your work with, bounce around ideas and so on, just so that both of
Yeah.
you can grow at the same time. On is also like a very good way to grow as well. And then as time goes on, maybe as you start making money from design, then you just reinvest the money that you're making back into yourself by maybe you go from taking free courses to paid courses, joining paid communities, or paying for mentorships and so on, and then you just keep going that way.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks, Michael. That was great.
Yeah. Okay, I think we are going to jump on to Kobe. Kindly unmute yourself and ask your question.
I think I can read
Okay.
it for him if he doesn't want to.
Okay, I think I have a question in the chat box from Kobe. He
Yeah.
says currently that AIs are almost used in all fields of design. And what message or how would you encourage the designers, especially someone who is beginning to build in the world of design? What do you think the design industry will be like in some few years to come?
I think our industry is going to be affected by AI. I mean, if you see the level of artistry and kind of, especially when it comes to illustration, some of the things that AI is able to do, I think it's pretty unreal. I think sometimes it can be frightening to see because you start wondering if your skills will be needed at some point. But I think we shouldn't look at it that way. I think we should look at technology as something that helps us get to where we want to be. It's, the minute that we start thinking that technology is going to overtake us or is going to be a thing that's better than us, I think this is when we kind of lose our ingenuity. I feel like technology has always been there since the beginning of time, but it was in a different capacity. And I think that now we kind of have to adapt and work with that. And I think that if we're able to use AI to enhance our skills, then that's a good thing. But I think that we should never lose sight of what we're trying to accomplish when we get into this industry. And I think that we should be cognizant of AI without being afraid of it. But at the same time, I think we should also be a little careful.
A little careful, you mentioned. That is really key. Thank you for that, Fabrice. That was dope.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any more questions? I think we are almost nearing our close-up time. Any more questions from the floor before we say goodbye? Any more? I think I'm probably going to ask the last question and then we'll call it off for a day. Fabrice, would you say In terms of frameworks, carving out a framework for a design career, is it feasible to carve out a framework for a design career?
Why wouldn't it be? Yes, it is feasible, and I think we all need to do it, and we all should do it. Just because, like I said, it's like planning. If you're planning for stuff at the house, if you're planning for your budget, you should plan for your career. And if you're transitioning from, let's say, like Kalama said, you're transitioning from a full-time job in a different industry to you want to come in the world of design or, in the UX, UI, I think it's important to know what you're coming in. So if you're in that field and you're trying to change, to have a career roadmap will actually help you access where you want to be a little faster than it's someone who comes in randomly.
That is key. Thank you so much for those very great insights and advice. I think we've learned a lot. Personally, I've learned a lot from this very session. Okay, I think we have another one from Kalama. Kalama, please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to add something that I just thinking ahead here about exploration when we are starting a new career path. Just allowing ourselves to try something and not being at ease. We've not been sure of if it's going to work or not for us. Just having in mind that in our roadmap we could accept the fact that I'm not sure if this is for me, but I'm actually willing to try it and see if it's going to work.
I think to comment on Kalama's comments, I think that regardless of what it is, at some point you're gonna fail. That's just what it is. I've never, I don't know if I've met a designer that was like, my career roadmap was perfect and everything happened exactly like I wanted it to be. I don't think that's necessarily true either, but I think that it's not really failure, it's just learning experience, right? And I think intrinsically if you belong to this field or not, and nobody else has the right to tell you that you don't. I think that if you feel that you have a place in this community, then you should be in this community. And because if your desire backs what you're trying to do, you are going to put everything that you can behind that.
Key. Really key on humility. Any more questions before we call it a day? Any more question? Okay, so I guess if there aren't any more questions, I want to say to Fabrice, thank you so much for making time to join us, to educate us, to share this insightful nugget with us. Personally, I've learned a lot, and I know my audience here / community have also learned a lot of things that we are going to use in crafting a very good or really defined design career roadmap. And one other thing I would want to pull off before I call it off is, guys, stay tuned. We have something planned underway for the community, which is soonest we're going to have our meetup in next month. I don't want to give it all, but stay tuned for our meetup with Yaks actually on the state of user research they conducted last year with, we having the chance to collaborate, that is UXGH. So stay tuned for that very meetup. Without much ado, I'd want to say thank you all again for making time to join us. For the questions that were asked, thank you again for those questions. We've learned a lot, shared a lot. Ciao would join in again next month for this same webinar. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you. Yeah, it was really nice to see